Withdrawals from Trump accounts are typically taxed as ordinary income. If the goal is to fund education, Trump account probably won't be the appropriate vehicle for that. My name is George Sardakis. I'm an associate at Hirsch Financial Services. As we record this, it is August of 2026. And over the summer, we've actually had a lot of development with regards to economic changes, personal finance changes, student loans, etc. Today, we're going to focus on one of the big major changes that have happened over the summer, which is the introduction of the Trump account. We're going to talk about what it is, some of the features, when we could use it, when we should use it, and just our overall assessment of these Trump accounts. So, what is a Trump account? The Trump account is a new type of tax advantaged account that was created for minor children. Generally, an account like this, for it to be established for an eligible child under the age of 18, needs a valid social security number. Now, with the account open, during the years before the child turns 18, parents, relatives, friends, family, grandparents, employers, etc., are actually able to make contributions to the account subject to applicable limits. For 2026, that contribution limit from individuals and employers are generally subject to an aggregate limit of $5,000. With that said, the account itself, the funds within it are going to be invested. That investment menu is also typically limited, similar to that of a 401k. The limitations of those investments are generally limited to U.S. indexes like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow, certain index funds that track these U.S.-based indices, et cetera. Now, one of the big features that have been generating a lot of attention is this federal pilot program for younger children. Qualifying citizen children born between January 1 of 2025 and December 3rd, 1 of 2028 may be eligible for a one-time $1,000 contribution from the U.S. Treasury after the appropriate election has been made. This kind of brings up two key questions for parents to consider. The first is, should we even in the account and establish the account so we can get the free $1,000 for our children? The second question is, should we contribute? Should our parents contribute? Us as the parents, so the child's grandparents, should they contribute to the account? Should we have other people contribute to the account? Birthday money, should those go into the account, etc.? If so, how much should we even contribute? So this gets into a broader conversation of the appeal to starting investments early. A very core principle of investments is the idea of compound interest. The earlier we start, even $1,000 can grow X fold over the course of 10, 20, 40, 50, 70 years. Yes, I skipped the numbers on purpose. That's one of the comparisons that many families often make when they're choosing between a Trump account or any kind of other savings or investment account. These monies that are set aside for newborns could potentially take decades to grow. Even on that $1,000 founding initial seed of the account, if no other contributions can be made, that $1,000 could double X number of times over. It's also important for grandparents when doing their estate plan or their financial plan when it comes to how much they want to contribute. They could give the child a gift in the form of like a check for their birthday or for Christmas, or they can make a deposit into these Trump accounts for a few $100s at a clip and watch the investment compound over time for the child for eligible expenses that we're going to get into in a short bit. The other consideration for grandparents is, what is it that we ultimately want this money to accomplish? Do we want it to be for the child's first car? Do they want to save it for their first home, for education purposes? These are all considerations for parents, grandparents, etc., to take into consideration when we are funding these children's Trump accounts should we choose to open them. With regards to the education component or the education line, there is a difference here with regards to the Trump account versus 529 accounts. This is the first comparison that a lot of people are going to make, and the first consideration they're going to take into account when it comes to funding these Trump accounts is, do I even want to use the account for education? The question is, it depends. You have a 529 account, which is fundamentally an education-focused account. This is going to provide tax-free benefit for eligible and qualified educational expenses for the student when they decide to use it for educational purposes, whether it's for private high school, vocational school, eligible collegiate experiences, etc. A Trump account is structured a bit differently. During the child's growth period, access to these funds are generally restricted. They are subject to a 10% penalty if the child removes the funds, or if the funds are removed for any reason prior to the child turning 18. It's also subject to federal income tax. Funds that are invested in a Trump account can be accessed without penalty upon turning age of 18. These funds are taken penalty-free if they're used for such as education and such as a first-time home purchase. However, unlike 529 accounts, withdrawals from Trump accounts are typically taxed as ordinary income to the minor, or now 18-year-old, upon taking the money out and withdrawal. We're actually going to touch a bit more on this in the coming sections. This brings upon another question. If a family specifically trying to prepare for future education costs, maybe a Trump account may not be the right vehicle. We may want to turn to a traditional 529 account where the funds grow tax deferred. There isn't a $5,000 ceiling for contributions made into the account, that being the 529 account. And you also have the tax-free withdrawal for qualified educational expenses like room and board, tuition, books, etc. So this is one key and fundamental example of different accounts serving different purposes. Again, if the goal is to fund education, Trump account probably won't be the appropriate vehicle for that. You may want to turn to a 529. If the goal is longer term growth for, again, a home purchase, or maybe setting us up for retirement or any other kind of adulthood expense, that's probably the better vehicle for that. When we look at Trump accounts, they may be favorable for grandparents in participating in their grandchildren's financial futures. This allows for them to contribute to the account and have it grow tax deferred for the child. The Trump accounts may also be favorable for grandparents in a number of different ways. Historically, grandparents have always wanted to participate in their grandchildren's financial future. They could take a look at different questions such as, is this money going to be specifically earmarked for education, which we've already addressed? Should it be available more broadly? And what I mean by that is this money going to be used for a vehicle purchase? Is it going to be used for moving out? Is it going to be used for starting a business? What is the broader availability of these funds going to be? How much control do we want to maintain as the person who's giving the gift? Do we want to custody the account and make the account in our name so we can control it? How is it exactly that we want to custody the account or custody the funds? Or do we feel comfortable just dumping it into the account and letting mom and dad take care of it? Another question is, when should the child ultimately retain custody or assume custody of those funds? Is it a situation where we don't necessarily trust the child to be financially literate or financially responsible until the age of X? If that's the case, that's a broader estate planning question for an attorney and for a financial planner. It's not necessarily in the scope of this video. These questions don't necessarily disappear because of the establishment of these Trump accounts. It's more a matter of, the child has this account. Is it something that I want to participate in as their grandparent? If so, how would I like the funds to be used? If not, what are some other avenues that I can consider so this way we can continue to participate in the child's financial future, but not necessarily have it be earmarked for the one thing that the Trump account is supposed to be earmarked for. Now, Trump accounts remain similar to other types of custodial accounts, whereby the child is ultimately the owner of the account, and a responsible adult, like a grandparent or an uncle or mother, father, aunt, whomever, is the one who's managing on behalf of the child until the child attains age of majority. The families therefore should understand that not only does the potential tax benefits and investment characteristics fall upon that of the child, but as does the ownership structure and the assumption of the account when the child reaches adulthood. With all that being said, there are some trade-offs to understand as well. The word tax advantage could also sometimes make financial accounts seem a little simpler than they really are. And this is really going to get into the nooks and crannies of the Trump accounts and the characteristics of it. Now, Trump accounts themselves have their own regulations, rules regarding contributions, eligible investments, taxation, and eventual distribution of the funds. During the growth period, families don't necessarily retain the same freedoms to withdraw the money that they would if it was their own, or if it was an ordinary savings account or brokerage account that's earmarked for the child. That restriction is imposed mainly due to the fact that this is supposed to be a long-term growth vehicle that is the Trump account, and not necessarily a savings or a brokerage account that can just be taken out at will. But that also means that the Trump accounts may be more suitable for different endeavors than others. The withdrawals themselves are subject to a number of criteria in order to determine the associated taxable consequences with them. First of all, the growth within the account. So that would be the investment returns, the dividends, capital gains. They all accumulate within the account tax deferred, but they're treated as pre-tax money, which means they grow tax deferred, which means we're pushing the ball off, the tax ball that is, off until later. And when we go to withdraw the funds from the account, those gains, those investment returns are taxed as ordinary income, similar to that of a traditional IRA. Contributions made by the initial $1,000 each for those eligible children by the U.S. Treasury are treated as pre-tax monies as well. So those are also subject to federal income tax at the ordinary tax rate for the 18-year-old. This also falls with the employer matches. So if our employer decides to make a contribution on our behalf to these Trump accounts, they get the tax deduction for it that year, but it's treated as pre-tax income or pre-tax withdrawal, that is, which is taxed as ordinary income for the 18-year-old upon withdrawal and distribution. On the other side of the ledger, personal contributions, so grandma and grandpa's contribution, mom and dad's contribution, aunt and uncle's contribution, cousins, brothers, whomever, personal contributions made into these Trump accounts are treated on a post-tax basis. So that means that it's calculated as what's called cost basis. So if the grand total over the course of the lifetime of the account, grand total personal contributions are $25,000, well then whatever the value of the account is, less $25,000 is going to be taxed as ordinary income, because this $25,000 is going to be withdrawn tax-free. Again, it's called the cost basis. It's money that's been put in on a post-tax basis. It's similar to that of an after-tax brokerage account that we may have as part of our overall portfolio. That's how those cost basis or personal contributions are treated. The investment selection, as we mentioned before, for these Trump accounts are intentionally limited. They're limited to U.S. indices such as the S&P 500, the Russell, the NASDAQ, et cetera. And that contrasts with those investment selections similar to that can be found in a brokerage account or an IRA or a 529 account. 529s are also limited, but they're not that limited, or is this the index for, again, U.S. indices. So with all of this being said, is a Trump account really worth it? I think the better question is It's not necessarily, is it worth it? Whenever a new financial account is introduced, it's tempting to immediately compare it with everything else or to demonize it because it's brand new. But financial planning is a lot more nuanced than that. For instance, a 529 account may only serve one purpose. A Trump account is going to serve another purpose. An IRA is going to serve another purpose. Custodial, trust, ordinary savings accounts, those have their own investment objectives for minors or for other people as well. The better question rather than is it worth it is what are we trying to accomplish? Are we primarily trying to prepare for college? Are we trying to give them a financial asset that they can utilize in adulthood to purchase their first home, to buy their first car, to move out on their own, whatever this may be? What is the primary purpose of this account supposed to be? And then with that, we could then determine what the appropriate account is going to be for the child for when they reach adulthood. So, with all of this being said, the Trump account adds an interesting new tool to our tool belt from the financial planning side of things, but also from the consumer side of things. It changes the planning landscape for families, again, by adding a new vehicle to play with. For eligible children born between 2025 and 2028, they do get that one-time lump sum of $1,000 deposited into the account. So that may be tempting for families who are looking to have children or have already had children within that time frame to kind of get their children started, even if it's at no little or no cost to the family, just to kind of get the kids started with that $1,000 initial contribution. Beyond the initial contribution, we also have to decide either from the fiduciary planning side of things, advisor side of things, or from the familial side of things, how much are we going to want to contribute to these Trump accounts for the benefit of our children? And then finally, we have a bunch of questions that we want to ask ourselves with regards to these accounts. What are the goals? When might we need the money, or when might the child need the money? Who should be the custodian? Who should be in charge of controlling these funds? How important is having flexibility with these funds? Is it something that we can completely just leave until the child reaches 18 and have them deal with the ordinary income tax? Or do we want to have a little bit more flexibility with the investments and invest in a custodial brokerage account for them? These are all different questions that we have to ask ourselves and different considerations that we have to keep in the back of our mind. We also want to figure out how does this fit in the broader overall financial plan. When it comes to putting monies away for the child, 529 accounts are huge for the education side of things. Having a custodial brokerage account is huge for the flexibility of investments. If we were to include the Trump accounts, where does this fit in the rest of the puzzle? Does it fit at all? I don't know. The larger lesson here is that the goal isn't necessarily to find what the best account is. It's more to understand that this is a tool that can be deployed for certain people, or other people just may not even want to consider it because it doesn't fit with their overall plan. And that's fine too. Again, personal finance is supposed to be personal. It's not supposed to be one size fits all. If having a Trump account doesn't fit your fancy because you don't like the limitation of the investments, or because you don't want to have as much restriction on the 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 use of the account or the use of the funds for the future, there are other vehicles that we can implement and other strategies that we can deploy for the financial needs for the child. With all of that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been a little bit since I recorded. I apologize. Life things got kind of complicated, but we are looking to record more episodes for the fall. And this is just something I wanted to get out, being that the Trump account news is so fresh. So thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and I will see you guys in the coming weeks. Thank you so much.